At the point when the individuals of England opposed their ruler, Charles I, they were fruitful, had him executed, and put another pioneer in control, Oliver Cromwell. In any case, when Cromwell was given the situation of ruler, the force got to his head and he turned out to be actually equivalent to the lords who had preceded him, maybe far more atrocious. He was all the more controlling, submitted massacre in Ireland, banned Christmas festivities and all fun, and proclaimed his child as his beneficiary. What was intended to be a fresh start for the nation was transformed into a severe fascism. Thus the individuals of England revolted by and by, were fruitful, and not long after, Cromwell passed on of jungle fever. The first beneficiary of Charles I, Charles II, was delegated as ruler, re-establishing the government. In spite of previously being dead, Cromwell was then guillotined himself for the decapitation of Charles I, and his head was shown on a pike. Charles II got one of the most well-known rulers in British history. Chevalier d'Eon was a French representative and spy in England and Russia. Once d'Eon resigned, it was uncovered to the open that they had been a lady the whole time. They were then made to wear female apparel as a result of cultural desires for ladies. They proceeded to think of certain books and bolster the American Revolution. Be that as it may, here's the kicker. When d'Eon passed on, the lady who was dressing the body for interment found that d'Eon was, actually, naturally male, and had been a man claiming to be a lady professing to take care of business. Darius the Great had an intriguing rising to the seat of Persia, when he was caught in the act remaining over his dead ancestor with a blade. Obviously, the magi who found him started to require the watchman, as Darius had plainly recently killed the emperor. In any case, Darius asserted that he had not executed the head, as the man who he has quite recently slaughtered was a shape-shifting wizard. He asserted this was not the genuine emperor, yet a fraud who had discarded the emperor and took the seat for himself. They consistently chose to raise Darius the wizard slayer to the seat of Persia. He got perhaps the best leader of the Achaemenid dynasty, and was well known for his virtuoso. This may have been because of the way that every other person was idiotic enough to put stock in shape-shifting wizards. On the night the Berlin Wall descended, an East German representative named Günter Schabowski had quite recently returned once again from a tiring outing to Poland, and was because of perused a declaration about movement rules changing for a live question-and-answer session. Since he had recently come back from Poland, he wasn't completely advised on the new standards, one of which was that East Berliners could apply for visas to go toward the West for short excursions, and hold up until several days after the declaration to apply and be acknowledged. The declaration was hurried and muddled, and began by making statements like advancement of movement rules, yakety yak, would now be able to visit the West, yakety yak. Schabowski hadn't read his discourse before going live on air, thus he was perusing this data just because. One writer asked when these new guidelines would become effective, and needing to look arranged, Schabowski answered, quickly, presently. When Julius Caesar was captured by pirates who didn't know who he was, they demanded 20 talents of silver for his freedom. Caesar was offended by this small amount, laughed, and told them to ask for at least 50, which they got. Caesar seemed to enjoy their company whilst he waited for his men to bring the silver the pirates had asked for, joining in with their games, and acting almost like he was of them. He often joked that he was going to have them arrested and crucified after they let him go, which they all found very funny and laughed with him until they were arrested and crucified after they let him go. And he propelled the second greatest maritime intrusion the world could ever observe, and when they showed up at the shores of Japan, they found that the Japanese had closed off their seashores with seawalls. The armada trawled around the shoreline of Japan, looking for a spot to land, and kept on looking, until the day that the armada was crushed by a subsequent storm. Mithridates VI governed the kingdom of Pontus around 100 BC. He was incredibly neurotic that somebody would attempt to kill him with poison, thus he took little portions of toxic substance every day to develop his resistance. Sadly, when he attempted to murder himself in the wake of being caught by Romans, the more fair way than being sold as a Roman slave, he couldn't as he was safe. Maybe he should have directed his suspicion into building a superior armed force. During the rule of the Mongol Empire, Genghis Khan sent an enormous exchanging procession to Khwarezmia, a realm in the Middle East, wanting to begin a coalition. In any case, the neighborhood governor didn't invite these voyagers, and captured them and condemned them to death. Genghis reacted to this by sending a couple of his representatives to request that the Shah discharge his men, and to disclose his aim to make a union. Rather than hearing what they needed to state, the Shah executed one of the ministers, and sent the others back with their heads shaved, which was a major affront to the Khan. Genghis Khan started to design his retribution. He attacked the realm with power, and the Shah had to get away to an island off the Caspian coast to pass on. At the tallness of the war between the domains, Alexander the Great concluded that he needed to revere at a sanctuary on the island of Tyre. The island's chiefs can't, on the grounds that they needed to stay unbiased in the war against Persia, and permitting the sovereign to love there would make an impression on the Persians that Tyre took the side of their foe. They advised the ruler to ask at a sanctuary in Old Tyre, which was situated on the terrain. Alexander, rankled by this demonstration of lack of regard, considered this to be a presentation of war, involved Old Tyre and went through a half-year constructing a scaffold to the island, utilizing logs and stones from the vestiges of Old Tyre. At the point when he arrived at Tyre, he executed nearly everybody in the city, and sold the rest into subjugation. During the First World War, the Germans masked one of their boats, the SMS Cap Trafalgar, as the British liner RMS Carmania. In any case, by an unfortunate stroke of incongruity, the primary boat they experienced close to the island of Trinidad, off the bank of Brazil, note, not Trinidad, was the genuine RMS Carmania, whose captain, Noel Grant, quickly perceived their endeavour to deceive British ships, and propelled an unexpected assault promptly toward the beginning of the day, eventually prompting the sinking of the SMS Cap Trafalgar. Pleasant attempt, Germans! Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.